session. Yeah, thank you, Chaviji, for your help, for the recording, everything. And as I said, we try to have some recap, and we try to review some definitions that we saw last time, and also some debates as well. Yeah. So, okay, just sharing the screen. Then I saw also there was some mistake in English in the definitions last time, so I corrected the file. I'm sorry for the mistakes sometimes. Okay, so we should be able to see the image now, yeah? Okay, very good. Very good. And then we try to just see what His Holiness tells us in the foundation of Buddhist practice to determine if full awakening is possible, to know what to practice and to abandon in order to attain awakening, and to discern the ultimate nature of all phenomena. We need to be able to test various claims and determine if they are accurate and non-deceptive. Yeah. So we saw that during the very first class, I guess, and just to remember the use of that, the purpose of the study on mind. Yeah. So as we saw before, when we call a clear and knowing, what we call clear and knowing, it's cognition or awareness or a knower, as you wish. And it includes main minds and mental factors. Yeah. Okay, so that's the broadest category within the mind. Okay, and we saw the definition of direct perception that you know by heart. Yeah, Palavila struggle with the definitions. No, not struggle. Okay. The definition of direct perception is quite easy. A cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken. Yeah, we saw that last time. So it's a mental event. It is a non-conceptual mind, and it is not mistaken. Do you remember the definition of a non-mistaken cognition?
It's non-mistaken with its with regard to its appearance of its object.
Yes, very good. The cognition which is not mistaken with regard to its appearing object. Exactly. Very good. And we saw last time the 4 types of direct perceptions. Yeah, you remember? Yeah, we had the sense direct perceptions. And do you remember the definition of a sense direct perception?
The the sense direct.
So it is a direct perception. So you should be able to add the definition of a direct perception within that.
Okay, yeah. So it's the sensory. It's free from conceptualization and non-mistaken with regard to the sense. So with regard to touch, see, is it like that? I forget now. It was a word. And I had written it down like 5 times and I can't find the book exactly at the time of the class. It's a test of my mind.
Yes, it's a sign. Yeah, it's a good sign. Yeah, it shows that you have everything in your mind.
Or not.
Or not. Yeah, the definition of a sense direct perception is a cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, which is produced in dependence on a physical sense power that has become its uncommon dominant condition. Yeah, a physical sense power. Yeah, we saw that before. Yeah, it's in order to distinguish the sense direct perception with the mental direct perception, for instance. Yeah. So usually speaking, if you know the definition of a sense direct perception, you should be able to know the definition of a mental direct perception. It's easy. You just change the
Cognition,
word.
which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, produced in dependence on a mental sense power that has become its uncommon dominant condition.
Yes, fantastic, Palavila, wonderful, almost Geshema. Geshema, Palavila, yeah, very good. Yeah, fantastic. So mental direct perception. Yeah, the definition is yes, we have to add an other knowing cognition. Yeah, because Yongzin Purwochak would add that. Of course, not in all the textbooks, but here, yeah, Yongzin Purwochak Rinpoche would add an other knowing cognition in order to distinguish the mental direct perception with the self cognition. Yeah, so it's just a tiny point here. If you don't add it, there is no fault. We we can accept the definition of a mental direct perception without the name other knowing cognition. Yeah, okay, which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, produced independence on a mental power that has become its uncommon dominant condition. Perfect. And the self-knowing direct perception, do you remember the definition?
Is it so in the other word we said other knowing, is it the self-knowing cognition that is non-mistaken
Yeah,
and free from conceptualization and is produced independence of its mental power?
yeah,
It's produced independence of its mental power and has, I don't know if
yeah,
that needs an uncommon condition,
yes,
dominant condition.
yes. The uncommon dominant condition is that very specific condition in the dependence on which we can discern a mental consciousness or sense consciousness and so on. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We saw last time, for instance, if we say, okay, for instance, if I taste the flavor of the tea, my tongue is the common condition for a tactile consciousness apprehending the heat of the tea. Yes, because my tongue can discern the warmth of the tea. Yeah, so this tongue would be the common condition for that, but it's an uncommon condition for taste consciousness.
I
Yeah,
see.
that's independence on the tongue that we, generally speaking, have a taste consciousness. Yeah, but yes, the tactile sense power is pervading the tongue as well. So that's why the tongue can discern if if the tea is warm or not.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. So it's the common condition for a tactile consciousness, but that's the uncommon condition for the taste consciousness. Yeah.
Okay. So for self-knowing, how would you apply that?
So for the self-knowing consciousness, they don't really speak about the three types of conditions. They would say that's the apprehending aspect. Yeah. Usually speaking, if we give the definition of a self-cognition, they would say the apprehending aspect, zinam in Tibetan. Yeah. And if we speak about the definition of a self-knowing direct perception, so then we will add the definition of the direct perception, which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken. But if you say just the apprehending aspect, that's okay.
So that means in this, you're really referring to the subject, you're not referring to the object, because you're saying the apprehending aspect of the subject, which is knowing itself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the apprehending aspect is the mind knowing itself, which is, as we said before, it's automatic. Yeah, we don't need to put effort, not like when we want to meditate on the nature of mind and so on. That's very different. Here, it's just automatic. As long as you have another knowing cognition, that cognition apprehends itself, knowing its object. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. Fantastic. And for the yogic direct perception, do you remember the definition?
I think Siddhartha Mola will tell us yogic direct perception.
Yeah. Yes, Itawamola, welcome. You know it by heart.
Uh, Yogic direct perception is an uh, uncontrovertible uh, perception which uh, I forgot.
I think non-controvertible, non-mistaken, free from conceptualization, direct perception of a valid cognizer.
Okay.
No?
Okay, so it would follow that an I consciousness realizing blue would be a yogic direct perception. Because it's incontrovertible with regard to its object and it's free from conceptualization, is non-mistaken. Yeah. So yes, we will see today what means incontrovertible because it belongs to the definition of a valid cognition. Yeah. So we will see that today. Okay. So the definition of a yogic direct perception is an other knowing wisdom. Yeah. In order to distinguish that from the self-cognition as well, which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken because it's a direct perception in the continuum of an arya, and which is produced in dependence on a samadhi that is the union of shamatha and vipassana, and that has become its uncommon dominant condition.
So
Okay.
can I ask why yogic direct perception that it has to have other knowing? Is it not self? They'll never do self-knowing?
Yes, exactly, because the self-knower or the self-cognition, as we said, is automatic. And the yogic direct perception, you never necessarily need to put effort in order to have that. Yeah, you need to train in meditation and in the calm abiding, shamatha, and special insight, vipassana, and you need to have a union of both. And you have to realize subtle impermanence or selflessness and so on directly. Yeah, and you become an Arya according to the non-prasangika. When you have a yogic direct perception, you become an Arya. Yeah, so you need to put effort in meditation for that. But the self-cognition arises spontaneously. Yeah.
So an Arya can have yogic direct perception and self cognizant mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Fantastic. Yeah, because the mental consciousness, which will directly realize, for instance, subtle impermanence, will know itself. Yeah, so there will be a self-cognition apprehending that yogic direct perception. So that's why Yongzin Pulbuchok says, Shenrik Ikemba, an other knowing wisdom, yeah, an other knowing cognition, yeah, in order to distinguish that from the self-cognition. But again, we could discard that because the self-cognition, as we said, is not a reason from meditation, is spontaneously a reason, yeah. So we could discard that point, yeah, other knowing, yeah, because the self-cognition doesn't need to be produced in dependence on a samadhi, yeah.
And if
Is that
is yogic direct perception only in the continuum of an Arya?
yes, for the non-prasangika.
Okay.
Yeah, the prasangika school would be very specific. They could say you can have we can be ordinary beings which directly realize subtle impermanence. So, and even the gross level of selflessness, the mere absence of a self-sufficient, substantial existent person could be realized directly through a yogic direct perception by an ordinary being. Yeah, for the prasangika, in order to become an Arya, you need to realize directly, so non-conceptually, emptiness, yeah, emptiness of inherent existence. Very good. But for the Sautrantika, emptiness is science fiction. Emptiness of inherent existence doesn't exist because inherent existence exists. Okay. So very good. So shamatha and vipassana, okay, we need to mix both, and we have that samadhi, and that samadhi becomes the uncommon dominant condition. Yeah, so that's very specific. So that's why we can distinguish the yogic direct perception and the mental direct perception, because the mental direct perception, the uncommon dominant condition, is just a mental power, any moment of mind. Yeah. But for the yogic direct perception, that's very specific. It's a samadhi. Yeah. Okay, very good. So we saw before that the direct perceptions, generally speaking, can be divided into three. Yeah? Direct perceptions, which are valid cognitions, direct perceptions, which are subsequent cognitions, and direct perceptions, which are inattentive cognitions, yeah? Except the yogic direct perception. The yogic direct perception is never inattentive. Yeah. Okay, very good. So now we enter into the valid cognitions. Yes. You've been so patient. Wow. Okay. So usually speaking, when we speak about the valid cognition, the word pramana is translated by tsema in Tibetan, and it can refer to a person as well. When we say kyebu tsema, it can be a person, reliable authority, like the Buddha. Yeah, when we have that salutation to the Buddha, tsema gyoba dola penjepa, tumpa deshe kyola chatselo, when we pay homage to the Buddha because he has become a reliable guide. Yeah. So a tsema, kyebu tsema can be a reliable guide. Yeah. But generally speaking, if we just speak about tsema, it's more like an authoritative source or even a valid cognition. Yeah, when we divide the pramana into two or even three, like the persons, the expressive sounds, and the cognitions, it's a terminological division. It's an artificial division. The real pramana is valid cognition. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. So according to the non-prasangika, valid cognition could be translated as prime cognition because the prefix pra in Sanskrit could be interpreted as prathama. Yeah, it means prime or first. But it could be also, it could refer to pradhana, main. So that's why in English, that's perfect, because in English, when you have the prime minister, that's the main minister. Yeah, so if you have a prime cognition, it's the main or the cognition with regard to its main object. And it's a prime cognition because it's new and incontrovertible. So we will see that. Okay, but in French or in other languages, we have to play on words. But in English, that's perfect. Yeah, the terminology prime is perfect. Okay, because it means both. So we have the definition here, Sadhu Miluwerikpat Semetseni. The definition of valid cognition is a new and incontrovertible cognition. Yeah, so if you know it by heart like a mantra, it's beautiful. It's much more powerful than Arya Manjushri's mantra. Maybe not, not more powerful, but as powerful as. Okay, so that's very important to know that definition. Of course, it's according to the non-prasangika, yeah, because the prasangika, because they interpret pramana as pradhana, the main object, they don't need to add new. Yeah, so for the prasangika, an incontrovertible cognition with regard to its main object would be the definition of a valid cognition. Yeah, but here we stay in the Sautrantika context. Okay, so a new and incontrovertible cognition. So new, what means new? Yeah, for instance, you have an eye consciousness apprehending blue or white and so on. You have the very first moment of that eye consciousness, which is a valid cognition. Then you have the second moment, which is not valid anymore because it's not new anymore. Yeah. And the third one, that's the same. Yeah. So third one is not new anymore. So only the first one is valid. And what means incontrovertible cognition? So we have here, I guess I already sent that on the WhatsApp, but just to see again what it means. So Geshe Dreyfus says, according to Chapa, Chuki Senge, a cognition must correctly identify its object to be valid. Technically, this process of correct identification is described as the elimination of false superimpositions, Blondok Choba. and understood as being equivalent to the obtainment of the identified object, Chedentoba in Tibetan. And indeed, Yonzin Purwochog Rinpoche would say that the definition of an incontrovertible cognition is a cognition that identifies its object, or that allows the obtainment of the identified object. Yeah. So that's even the definition of an incontrovertible cognition. Yeah. Okay, so cognitions are valid if and only if they eliminate the appropriate false superimpositions and thus epistemically secure the object being identified. False superimpositions can be eliminated in two ways: by relying on reasoning or by experience. Whereas the first is the characteristic of inference, the second is how valid perception identifies its object. Fantastic. Okay, so the very first part is important. Yeah, a cognition which is valid has to be incontrovertible, avi samvadi in Sanskrit. Yeah, so miloa in Tibetan. And in order to be incontrovertible, it has to eliminate false superimpositions or just superimpositions. That's okay. Yeah, we can just put aside false. Okay, so that it means that a valid cognition has to realize its subject. Yeah. Okay, so the first moment is valid, and the second moments are subsequent cognitions. And the definition of a subsequent cognition is a cognition which realizes what has already been realized. Okay. Okay, that's very short and very useful. Yeah, a cognition which realizes what has already been realized. Yeah. Okay, so then we will play with that today. So we have the very first moment of an eye consciousness realizing blue. That's a valid cognition. And the subsequent moments are not valid anymore. Okay, but we can see that the subsequent cognition has a first moment as well, yeah? Okay, so we will play with that today. Well,
I'm
it
sorry,
follows that the subject... Yes?
why is subsequent not valid? Because subsequent comes after valid, so it should be valid and subsequent.
Yes, because, you know, the definition of a valid cognition is...
Valid cognition is new and incontrovertible.
Cognition, yes, exactly. And the subsequent cognition is not new anymore. It realizes that which has been realized. Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
they're opposite each other. Are they contradictory?
Yes, exactly. Very fantastic. Yeah, valid cognition and subsequent cognition are contradictory.
Is that true?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is true. So,
So-
but here we will see there is a debate with regard to that. So maybe we can play with that debate and we will see after if it's true or not, yeah? Okay. Well, it follows that the subject, the first moment of a subsequent cognition is necessarily new.
Oh,
Would you say
see, they're
accept?
debating exactly what came to my mind.
Yeah, because yes,
Yeah, because
voilà.
subsequent, yes, accept. Well, it follows that the moment of subsequent cognition is necessarily new.
Why?
Because why for the and accept for Palavila. So maybe Isar will say why accept? Okay, so okay, so if we say why, so it follows that the subject, the first moment of a subsequent cognition, is not necessarily new. C'était vraiment là.
Accept.
Okay, so it follows that the very first moment of a cognition is not new.
Or no pervasion.
So when we say no perversion, the challenger has given a reason, yeah, but I have not given any
Oh,
reason.
oh,
Yeah, I just said, okay, the very first moment of a subsequent cognition. What did I say? Okay, so it follows that the very first moment of a subsequent cognition is not new.
except.
Okay, so it follows that the very first moment of a subsequent cognition was preceded by a subsequent cognition.
Why?
Okay, so it follows that the subject, the very first moment of a subsequent cognition hasn't been preceded by subsequent cognition.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that this very first moment of subsequent cognition is a new moment of a subsequent cognition.
Why? Uh,
Okay. So it is not because?
um, because it's a subsequent moment of uh, 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 it's a subsequent moment
Okay,
of
so it follows that if,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
It's a
okay.
subsequent
So
moment of
if
a
it,
not
valid
the first.
cognition, right? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying, Siddhartha?
yeah, yeah.
okay, yes, it's a subsequent moment of a valid cognition. Okay, so it follows that a valid cognition can have a subsequent moment.
Mm,
Except.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that that the definition of a valid cognition is not just a new and incontrovertible knower. It can
Why?
be a new and a second one moment. But yeah, because when we say a new and incontrovertible cognition, it's just one moment of cognition, yeah, which is a valid cognition, yeah. We could say the following moments are not valid anymore, are not new anymore, yeah.
Oh, so it's not in the same continuum that first it was a valid cognition, second it became a subsequent cognition. So
Yes, it is in
we
the
don't
same
say it like.
continuum. Yeah, it is in the same continuum. For instance, okay. For instance, if you see that cup, then after during that perception of that cup, you have the first moment, which is valid, and the moment 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Those moments are not valid anymore. They are not freshly realizing that cup, yeah, anymore. So they are subsequent. They are in the same continuum of your eye consciousness, but they are subsequent. Yeah? So it follows that if they are subsequent, they cannot be valid.
Except.
Okay, very good. And okay, so now you have your eye direct perception realizing that cup. So the very first moment is a valid cognition. Do you accept that?
Yes, except.
Okay. And just after that very first moment, you have the very first moment of a subsequent cognition.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that the very first moment of subsequent cognition is the first moment.
Except.
Okay, so it is new.
No. Reason not established.
So it follows that it follows that the very first moment of a subsequent cognition is not new.
Except.
Is not new because
It's subsequent cognition. First moment of subsequent cognition. So
okay,
subsequent
so
cognition is direct, valid.
yes. Okay, so it follows that that very first moment of a subsequent cognition is not new.
Except.
It's not a new, we could say a new type of cognition arising.
Yes, except.
It is. It is, or is it not?
It is not.
Yeah. We have a valid cognition first, then just after we have a very, very brand new subsequent cognition.
Mm, why?
Because that subsequent cognition was not produced before. It's just new. Like for instance, we see again that cup, and we have the first moment which is valid, and again we have the very, very fresh subsequent cognition.
Even though it is very, very fresh, it is a subsequent cognition of that very direct, valid cognition.
Exactly. So that's a subsequent cognition, yeah?
Yes.
And it is a new subsequent cognition because it's just freshly a reason following that valid cognition, yeah?
Yes.
It's not.
Except. No?
Yes. So it's not a new type of, like for instance, okay, okay, okay. Now you see that book, yeah, the color of that book. So you have a
Mhm,
very fresh valid cognition first, then a
mhm.
new type of subsequent cognition because that subsequent cognition realizes that book and is following a new valid cognition. Yeah, that's a valid cognition apprehending that book, realizing that book. And just after that first moment of a valid cognition, you have a very fresh subsequent cognition. No?
It can be a subsequent cognition, but it is still not fresh because it has already been realized by the direct, valid cognition.
That is why.
Yes,
So yes, so it is the first moment of a subsequent cognition which has
if I
realized
accept.
what the valid cognition has realized.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so you're saying, Siddharamula, that it's not new because valid has already seen the new. So why is subsequent seeing the new? But because they're two distinct moments, which is what I was confused about, I think because they're two distinct moments, and we are saying that valid cannot be valid again, it has to be new to the subsequent. I think that's what we're leading towards. Who knows?
Yeah. So we could posit that, for instance, as long as you see something, yeah, you have a very first moment. Yeah, you see something, you hear something, you taste the tea and so on. So you have a first moment. Okay. So if that first moment realizes its object, that's a valid cognition. And that valid cognition, if you stay a bit longer on that object, you have a subsequent cognition. Yeah. And each subsequent cognition is new as well because you have a new object which is realized by valid cognition, then realized again by the subsequent cognition. So you can say that your mind is made of different instances and has any cognition has a beginning. Yeah. Okay, very good. Any cognition has a beginning. So it follows that the subsequent cognition has a beginning.
Except.
Okay, and it follows that that beginning, that very first part of that cognition, subsequent cognition, is new because it's a beginning.
Yes. Can we define new again?
New means so that's the core of the debate. New means by its own power. So because you're too sharp, my debate is destroyed. But okay, let's see. Let's let's try to see what less sharp defender would have said. Okay, the less sharp defender would have said accept. It's new. The very first moment of a subsequent cognition is new. Yeah, okay. So, and it follows that the subject of subsequent cognition is necessarily incontrovertible. So that is different. Yeah, would you accept or would you say why? Yeah,
It's
what means incontrovertible cognition?
The superimpositions have been removed.
Yes, exactly. Superimpositions have been removed. So it follows that an incontrovertible cognition realizes its object.
Accept.
Yes, very good. Yes. And a subsequent cognition, what is the definition of a subsequent cognition?
A cognition which realizes what has already been realized.
Exactly. A cognition which realizes what has already been realized. So it follows that a subsequent cognition is necessarily incontrovertible.
Yeah, accept.
Yes, very good. Okay. Yes, accept. The subject, the subsequent cognition is necessarily incontrovertible because, so we just said, yeah, because
Yes.
it realizes its object, yeah? Okay, or it removes superimpositions. Okay, it follows that if a cognition realizes its object, it's necessarily an incontrovertible cognition.
Why?
Because we just said that 1 minute ago. We said, okay, the subject of subsequent cognition is necessarily incontrovertible because it realizes its object, yeah?
But not all
So
cognition can realize incontrovertible object, right? So we have so many other cognitions. We could be mistaken.
yes, but if it is a subsequent cognition,
Oh,
yeah, subsequent cognition is necessarily incontrovertible because it realizes its object. So it follows that if a cognition realizes its object, it's necessarily incontrovertible, yeah?
yes, accept.
Very good. It follows that if a cognition realizes its object, it's necessarily an incontrovertible cognition.
Okay, accept.
Yeah, you are very prudent. You are very careful. You are very cautious. Very good. Accept. It follows that the subject, the first moment of a subsequent cognition is a valid cognition. So of course you would say no, because you are very sharp. Yes, it is not. Yeah, they are contradictory. Okay. So yes, what shall we say? It follows that the subject, the first moment of subsequent cognition is a valid cognition.
Why?
You would, why exactly? So it follows that the subject, the first moment of a subsequent cognition is, I would say, okay, why? Is a valid cognition because it is a new and incontrovertible cognition. So here we give a reason, yeah? So we can
No
say
pervasion.
accept. We can say no perversion. We can say no, the reason is not established and so on. So if we say no perversion, it follows that if it is a new and incontrovertible cognition, it's not necessarily a valid cognition.
Why?
So if it is it follows that if it is a new and incontrovertible cognition, it's necessarily a valid cognition.
Accept.
Yeah, so there is perversion, yeah?
Oh, but what we are saying is, no, the first moment of a subsequent cognition is a valid condition. That not the second part of it. I'm debating the
Paradila,
first.
you accept. You accept. So it follows that the subject, the two subsequent cognition and valid cognition are not contradictory. Yeah, because a valid cognition is a new and incontrovertible cognition. It means it realizes newly its object. But subsequent cognition realizes that which has already been realized. So it doesn't realize newly. Yeah. So either a cognition realizes newly or freshly, or a cognition realizes but not newly. So could you find a common base between the two, a cognition which newly realizes and a cognition which realizes but not newly?
No common base could be
No
found.
common base, exactly. Yeah, either it is fresh or it is not fresh. Yeah, it cannot be fresh and not fresh at the same time, yeah? Okay, very good.
So the first
But
moment of a
yeah,
subsequent cognition is not a valid cognition.
exactly, very good. It's not a valid cognition, but the challenger is a bit vicious. He tries to assert that, yeah. So he tries to say, yeah, the very first moment of a subsequent cognition is new because that's the first moment and is an incontrovertible cognition, but it's not a new and incontrovertible cognition. Yeah, it's like, you remember when we said the boiling water is on the same time, on one side it is hot and on the other side it is burning, but it is not hot and burning because it is not fire. Yeah. So here we should say no, the reason is not established. Yeah, we should say yes, a subsequent cognition, the first moment of a subsequent cognition is a new moment, but, and it is an incontrovertible cognition, but it is not a new and incontrovertible cognition. Otherwise, it would follow that we can find a common base between subsequent cognition and valid cognition, but we cannot find them. Yeah. Otherwise, we could find common base between water and fire. Yeah, boiling water would be fire and water. Yeah, it's not the case. Yeah. Yeah, do you agree with that? Okay. Very good. So the reason is not established. Yeah, we should say on one side it is new, on the other side it is incontrovertible, but it is not new and incontrovertible. And even I would say, like Setan Wamola, that even a very first moment of subsequent cognition is not even new, because what we mean when we say a new and incontrovertible cognition, we say by its own power. Yeah, Kerubje would say so. In the definition of valid cognition, you can find that in freedom through correct knowing, and also in, of course, in recognizing reality. Yeah. So he says, that's much more sensible, we could say. The definition of a valid cognition is a cognition which is incontrovertible with regard to the object of comprehension, which it thoroughly determines by its own power, by its own power. That's what they mean when they say new and incontrovertible knower. New means by its own power. When you realize, when your eye consciousness realizes the red color of the cup, the very first moment of your eye consciousness realizes the color by its own power, not depending on a previous moment of mind, we would say, or not depending on a previous moment, on a previous valid cognition. Yeah. Of course, there was a previous moment of mind, yeah, but that previous moment of mind is one condition of that eye consciousness. It's not a valid cognition. Yeah? Okay, so the very first moment of your eye consciousness realizing the red color of the cup is a valid cognition because it realizes its object by its own power, and the subsequent moments, they realize by the power of the very first valid cognition. So the subsequent cognition realizes its object by the power of the preceding valid cognition, not by its own power. That's what they mean when they say new or not new. Yep.
I can ask, by its own power, are we talking about the power of the mind at that moment?
Yes. Yes, exactly, because that cognition thoroughly determines or ascertains or realizes its object, yeah, not by the power of a preceding valid cognition. It means that, for instance, if we say new, we could even debate that. We could say, okay, now you see again that cup. Yeah, but you saw that 2 minutes ago. So it follows that your eye consciousness is not new again. But we could say, yes, it is new again, because you have a valid cognition which realizes its subject by its own power, even if you had the same valid or similar valid cognition 2 minutes ago. Yeah,
So
so I
at this
put the cup
moment, we
aside.
have this valid cognition that I saw this cup, but
Okay.
then the subsequent, when you were describing that the subsequent cannot determine by its own power, because
Exactly.
we are utilizing the valid moments Is it that we are
Yeah.
using the valid moment's power or the subsequent? I don't understand. When its
Yeah.
own power.
Yeah, by its own power means that you don't depend on the preceding valid cognition. Yeah, like when you see again that cup, your eye consciousness realizes its object by its own power, and the subsequent moments would realize the same cup or the same continuum of the cup by the power of the preceding valid cognition from the very first moment. Yeah, so the subsequent cognitions just realize, but not freshly, not newly, not by their own power. Yeah, they realize by the power of the preceding valid cognition.
So, I'm sorry, just to dig into this a little bit. When I saw it, I thought it's red, right? When I saw the
Yes.
cup, it's red. The
Yes.
subsequent moment is like, it could be orange. So, is that subsequent moment debating that I saw valid? The valid moment said it's a red cup. Subsequent moment doubts and says it could be orange. Is that
Yes.
still valid or is it
No.
the subsequent?
Yeah, so the subsequent moments would be subsequent moments, but not subsequent cognitions, because the subsequent cognition has to realize its object. But if you doubt, your doubting consciousness is not a subsequent cognition anymore.
Okay.
It's a subsequent moment of mind, but not a subsequent cognition, yeah, because a subsequent cognition has to realize its object.
Okay, realize its object, yeah. Okay.
Yes, like, yes.
Christophila, how do we differentiate between the subsequent and valid in terms of experience? Like, if I see the red cup, then I turn around backwards, and then later on I turn back and see the cup. So, would it be subsequent, or again the first moment would be valid, or
It would
would
be
it
valid.
be valid? Okay,
Yeah,
so like your sense consciousness for the first moment when I sense consciousness sees it, so that would be the valid.
exactly. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, otherwise, yes, otherwise we would have only one valid cognition for one object in our life. For instance, the very first moment when I bought that cup, that would be the valid cognition. Then all the subsequent moments, even for 10 years and so on, would be only subsequent moments. But according to that very specific type of epistemology, they would say that every time you turn your mind towards that object, then you have a new valid cognition again. We could defend that because the cup has changed anyway. Yeah, even if it's the same continuum, it has changed. Yeah, so it's in one sense a new object. Yeah. Okay, very good. But for some permanent phenomena, if you turn your mind toward emptiness today and 5 days later, is it again a valid cognition or not? Yeah, because emptiness doesn't change. So we could debate that. Very good. So as long as you know that sardu miloweripa, yeah, a new and incontrovertible cognition, new means by its own power, then that's okay. Yeah, you know what means a valid cognition. Okay, fantastic. Bob, Kevin, and Stuart are so happy. Okay. So now, last debate for today. Well, I guess that you don't know the difference between the two, direct perception and valid cognition. Oh, you have 2 hours. Okay, so we should say first, the reason is not established yet to save time. Okay, the reason is not established. Then, okay, it follows that you know the difference between the two, direct perception and valid cognition. Yes, accept. Okay, pose it. And now you can make rounds and try to find common base. If there are common base, then they are not contradictory. And they could be only equivalent. So if you check something which is in A but not B, then they are not equivalent. And again, if you find something which is in B but not A, then they are not equivalent, and so on and so on. Yeah? So what could you find between the two? Direct perception and valid cognition? 4, says Palavila.
No, 3.
No, sorry. I should wear my glass. Okay, 3.5. That's 3. Okay. So there are common bases. Okay. Who would say contradictory? Nobody. Nobody says contradictory. Nobody does. No debate. Okay. So it follows that if they are not contradictory, you necessarily can posit a common base between the two, direct perception and valid cognition. What could it be? Can you give a specific illustration? Because if you say a valid direct perception, then it's a bit too broad, maybe.
Consciousness seeing a red cup for the first time.
Okay. An eye consciousness, the subject, an eye consciousness seeing a red cup for the first time. Okay. So it follows that an eye consciousness seeing a red cup for the first time is necessarily a direct perception.
Sorry, it has to be a mental direct perception. So it has to be, oh, what is
Yeah, direct perceptions, we have four
I
types. Yeah?
sense power. I
Yeah.
sense power.
Okay, the eye sense power is matter. Yeah, cannot be a
Oh, it's matter.
perception.
I wanted the mental consciousness that sees the
Yeah.
cup for the first time.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, let's say, okay, we could discuss the very first one and we can discuss the second one as well. Yeah. Okay. But if we discuss the first one, then maybe you will see that you can give some precision. You can precise a little bit this illustration. Okay, so it follows that let's suppose that the defender would give the first option. It follows that an eye consciousness seeing for the first time a red cup is necessarily a direct perception.
Yeah, except.
Yes, it is a direct perception because, and now you have to remember your definitions.
It is a direct perception because it is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken with regard to its appearance.
Okay, it follows that if it is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, it's necessarily a direct perception.
Except.
It follows that the news that I watched today are free from conceptualization and they are not mistaken. So it follows that there are direct perceptions.
I think yogic direct perception.
So we will take this one as well. Okay, so we will take this illustration as well. So, but if we say just if it is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, for instance, is my cup free from conceptualization and non-mistaken? Yes. But is it a direct perception?
Produce
No.
independence of physical sense. Are we talking about the uncommon dominant condition
No.
that is not, I don't know what I'm
No,
missing.
just direct perception. Yeah, the definition of direct perception has 3 elements, yeah.
With respect to appearance, I don't know.
No, it has 3 elements, yeah. It has to be a cognition. Yeah, otherwise the cup would be a direct perception, yeah, because it is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, yeah.
Oh, a cognition
Yeah.
that is free
Yeah.
from, okay, that's
Yeah.
important.
Otherwise, the Vaibhashika could say, okay, the eye sense power is a valid cognition, is a
Okay.
direct perception. Okay. Yes, c'était un moment-là, you raise your hand? No?
I was
Okay.
counting the 3. I was counting the 3.
Okay, I thought it was you told me, okay, calm down. Okay. So It follows that if it is a cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, it's necessarily a direct perception.
Except.
Yes, so it follows that the eye consciousness which sees for the first time the red cup is a direct perception
Except.
because it is a cognition free from conceptualization and
yeah.
non-mistaken. Very good. Okay. And it follows that that eye consciousness which sees a cup for the first time is necessarily a valid cognition.
Except.
It follows that the eye consciousness seeing that cup for the first moment when I hear a beautiful guitar solo from David Gilmour is necessarily a valid cognition. Is not an inattentive cognition.
No. If it's inattentive, if it's also listening to music, I guess so.
Yes, yes, because my mind will totally be blown by that beautiful guitar solo from David Gilmour. So of course, even if there is a red cup in front of my eye consciousness is seeing that, but is not realizing that. Yeah. So it follows that an eye consciousness which sees a cup for the first time is not necessarily a valid cognition.
Oh,
Is not necessarily a realizing cognition.
I see. So should I say a valid, so to sharpen this, I could say a valid, an eye conscious, a
Yes,
valid eye consciousness seeing a cup for
yes,
the first time, a red cup for the
exactly.
first
Oh, you
time.
could say an eye consciousness which realizes a cup for the first time.
Okay.
That would be okay as well, yeah? Okay,
And
very good.
and also like earplugs, if I put earplugs and then my eye consciousness will see.
Yes, it depends if you listen to yes, you can put earplugs, but if there is no music in your earplugs, then you can still realize the cup. But if there is a beautiful music that you like, then maybe your eye consciousness would see or apprehend the cup, but not realize the cup. Yeah, you could thereafter you could say, oh, did I see a cup or not? Yeah, or did I see the color of the cup? I don't remember. I don't remember. So if I don't remember, it means that on the first place, I didn't have any valid cognition. Yeah. So my eye consciousness was inattentive. Yeah. Okay. So we'll see the definition of inattentive cognition next time. But here, okay, if we say an eye consciousness which realizes the red cup for the first time, it is a new and incontrovertible cognition, yeah? So it is a valid cognition, yeah? And it is a direct perception because it is a cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken. Very good, fantastic. Okay, so what did I put? Okay, so if we say yogic direct perception, so even for the mental direct perception, we have to add realizing, yeah, because a mental direct perception can be inattentive as well, yeah. But if we say a yogic direct perception, it follows that the yogic direct perception is necessarily valid, is necessarily a valid cognition.
Except.
Okay, so okay. So it follows that yogic direct perception endures only for a first moment.
No, it can endure
Yes, it can
subsequent
endure.
moments also. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The Arya can meditate hours and hours on selflessness and so on. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
follows that the moment 2, 3, 4, and so on realize that has been realized already.
Yes. Except.
Okay, so it follows uh, that the subsequent moments of yogic direct perception can be subsequent cognitions.
Uh, uh,
Yeah. So
Except, yeah.
yes, exactly. There can be subsequent cognition. They still realize their object, but they are
Except,
subsequent.
yeah.
Yeah. So of course, when we study, for instance, with Venerable Abdullah, he would say that any direct perception, the yogic direct perception, is necessarily valid in the sense that it's necessarily non-mistaken. And but usually speaking, we could say also, according to the Prasangika, any subsequent cognition is a valid cognition. So maybe that's why Venerable Abdullah, we should ask him what he's feeling. But according to the Prasangika, when we said, you know, the definition of a valid cognition, even the subsequent cognitions are valid cognitions. So for a yogic direct perception, any yogic direct perception is a valid cognition for the Prasangika. But for the Sautrantika, it seems that the very first moment is a valid cognition, and the subsequent moments are subsequent cognitions. They still realize their object, but they are not valid anymore because they are not new anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
this would be, the relationship would be different for Prasangika and Swatantrika, right? This.
yes, exactly. Yeah, for the Prasangika, any cognition which is incontrovertible with regard to its main object is necessarily a valid cognition. Yeah, so even the moment 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay, very good. But yes, yogic direct perception cannot be inattentive, cannot be an inattentive cognition. Yeah, Acharya Dharmakirti would say so. Lord Chempe Tonine Namba Tamche Barje. Yeah, the mind of the great seers, of the great sages, ascertain all the aspects. So yogic direct perception cannot be inattentive. Yep. Okay, very good. So if we say yes, okay, the first moment of a direct valid cognition of a yogic direct perception, the first moment of a yogic direct perception is a direct perception and is a valid cognition. Yeah, that would be okay. Yeah, very good. Okay, fantastic. I said the first moment of an eye consciousness realizing blue. Yeah, so if it's an eye consciousness, it's necessarily not conceptual. Yeah. And if that eye consciousness realizes its object, it's a direct perception and it's a valid cognition, yeah, for the first moment. And if it is the first moment of an eye consciousness realizing blue, it's a new and incontrovertible cognition, so it's a valid cognition. Yeah, everybody agrees? Okay, fantastic. So, who said 3? Palavila, you said 3. So if you said 3, you can posit the perversion. Palavila is looking after the dog in the garden. It follows, Paravila, you can posit the perversion. Okay, no problem. Who said 3? Who said 4? Who said 4 possibilities? Okay, you have 1 more hour to decide. So, okay, we can do that again together if you wish. Okay, so then yes, we try, we dare to debate like this. Okay, so it follows that you can posit an illustration of a direct perception which is not a valid cognition, which is not a cognition which realizes newly its object.
Second moment of eye consciousness realizing blue.
Yes, fantastic. Exactly, it's a Mola. Yes, the second moment of an eye consciousness realizing blue. Yeah, it follows that the subject, the second moment of an eye consciousness realizing blue, is a direct perception. Accept, yeah. It is a direct perception because?
Because it is realizing its it's realizing its object.
Okay, so it follows that an inferential valid cognition realizing selflessness is direct perception because it realizes its object.
uh,
Yeah, so it's a direct perception because?
uh, non-conceptual perception
Yes,
realizing its object. Yeah.
yes, if it is, yes, okay, yes, if it is a non-conceptual perception, so if it is a non-conceptual cognition which realizes its object, it's necessarily a direct perception.
Except.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because it is non-conceptual, so it is free from conceptualization, and it realizes its object. So if it realizes its object, it's necessarily non-mistaken for a non-conceptual mind, a non-conceptual cognition, which realizes its object. It's necessarily not mistaken. Yeah. So we will see that next time, I guess. So yes. So if it is a if it is a cognition or a consciousness which is free from conceptualization and which realizes its object, it's necessarily a cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken. So yes, it is a direct perception. Fantastic. Okay, and that second moment of an eye consciousness realizing blue, it follows it is not a valid cognition.
Except.
It is not a valid cognition because?
Because it's not the first moment. It is not new.
Yes. Exactly. As we said before, it is not new in the meaning of it is not realizing its object by its own power. Yeah, it is a subsequent cognition. Yeah, we could say like this because it is a subsequent cognition. If it follows that if it is a subsequent cognition, it's necessarily not a valid cognition.
Except.
Yes, very good. Yes, because even if we say that the first moment of a subsequent cognition is new, it's not new in the meaning of by its own power. Yeah. Okay, very good. Fantastic. So it follows that you can posit an illustration of a valid cognition, which is not a direct perception. Checking on Google. Okay, so we should remember what the great Acharya Dharmakirti said. He said, Shel Jani Chir Tsemani Dunjani Don Minuchir. Yeah, because we have two types of object of comprehension. We have two types of valid cognitions. Yeah. And after he says Dunjani Don Minuchir, because some objects of comprehension are able to perform a function and some are not. So do you remember which types of appearing objects could say, okay, something not too complicated. Okay. So for instance, yes, we saw that before. We saw that before. You remember on the top of the hill, there is smoke. So if there is smoke, there is fire. It follows that on the top of the hill, which is smoky, there is fire because there is smoke. If you realize that, is it a valid cognition? Yes, you realize newly the presence of fire on the top of the hill, independence on the reason, the valid reason, which is there is smoke.
Except.
Okay, so it follows that your consciousness which realizes newly the existence of fire on the top of the hill is a valid cognition.
Accept.
Okay, it is a valid cognition because?
Because it's new and it is incontrovertible.
Okay, new and incontrovertible, yeah? And it is a cognition, yeah?
Accept.
Yes, okay. So it follows that if it is a cognition which is new and incontrovertible, it's necessarily a valid cognition.
Accept.
But this cognition which realizes newly the presence of fire and dependence on the reason there is smoke is not a direct perception.
Accept.
Okay, it is not a direct perception because?
Because it is conceptual.
Yes, it is conceptual because it is an inferential valid cognition, yeah? Very good. It follows that if it is an inferential valid cognition, it's necessarily conceptual.
Accept.
Fantastic. Very good. Yes. So what did I put? Inferential valid cognition, realizing selflessness. Yeah. Okay. So of course, yeah, we can realize many things by inferential valid cognition, but here selflessness is so important. Okay. So we have cognitions which are at the same time A and B, direct perceptions and valid cognitions. We have direct perceptions which are not valid cognitions, and we have valid cognitions which are not direct perceptions. So it follows that you can posit something which is none of them among cognitions, of course. Otherwise, another rabbit is so easy.
Unattentive. Inattentive.
Ah, yes, inattentive cognition. It follows that an inattentive cognition is necessarily not a direct perception.
Accept.
Okay, so it is not a direct perception because?
Because it is not realizing its object.
So it follows that if it is a cognition which doesn't realize its object, it's necessarily not a direct perception.
Accept.
Okay, so when we see that cup, that orange or I don't know, reddish cup, when we listen, we have the earplugs, and we listen to the beautiful guitar solo from David Gilmour or someone else, Eric Clapton. It follows that we don't have a direct perception of that cup. Yeah, our eye consciousness, which apprehends the cup, is a cognition, is free from conceptualization, and is not mistaken. So it follows
Accept.
that if it is a cognition which is free from conceptualization and non-mistaken, it follows it is necessarily a direct perception.
Accept.
Yes, very good. But that direct perception doesn't realize its subject because it's inattentive, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, so we will see the definition next time, I hope. Yeah, the definition of an inattentive cognition, yeah. It is one of the divisions of the direct perceptions, yeah? Except the yogic direct perceptions, yeah, if we put them aside. But we can have direct perceptions which realize newly their objects, so they are valid cognitions. Yeah, we can have direct cognitions, direct perceptions which realize but not newly, so they are subsequent cognitions. And we have also direct perceptions which don't even realize their object. Yeah, so they are inattentive cognitions. Yeah, so if they don't realize that their objects, they are not mistaken. Yeah, they are not mistaken at all. Yeah, but still they have no capacity to produce an ascertainment of their object. So if direct perception doesn't realize its object, it's inattentive. It's if it's realizing its object but not newly, it's subsequent cognition. And if it realizes newly its object, it's a valid cognition. Yeah. So that's why we have three types of direct perceptions in general. Yeah. Yeah. So it follows that if it is an inattentive cognition, it's necessarily a direct perception.
Except. Mm.
Okay, very good. So it follows you can posit something which is not a direct perception and which is not a valid cognition among cognitions.
A dreamer. I'm sorry, I had to get on my phone because I have to drive, so I lost a little bit. But
Yeah, no problem. A
a
dream.
dreaming cognition, yeah,
A
is
dreaming
invalid and
cognition.
not direct.
Yes, okay, yes, it is not a direct perception because
Because the mind is not using any sense objects, right? Any sense
okay.
powers.
So it follows that a yogic direct perception is not a direct perception because it doesn't use any sense power, any physical sense power.
Oh. No. Okay, no, that won't work.
Yeah, still the dream, yeah, according to Jungzin Polbochok, is a wrong mental, non-conceptual cognition. A wrong mental, non-conceptual cognition. Yeah, so yeah, if it is wrong cognition, it's necessarily mistaken. Yeah.
Yes.
So if it is mistaken, necessarily not a direct perception.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
If
so
it's
it
mistaken,
works.
it's not direct. Okay, okay.
Exactly. Yes. So yes, if we follow what says Jungzin Pulbuchok, yeah, but if we follow what says Venergen Damdullah, a direct perception is necessarily free from conceptualization. Yeah, and a valid direct perception is necessarily free from conceptualization and non-mistaken. Yeah. So according to Gendamdullah, a direct perception can be mistaken because direct perceptions means non-conceptual mind. Yeah, but here,
Okay, so
according to
dream,
Jungzin Pablo, it works. Yeah, if it is mistaken, it's not a direct perception. Yeah, according to Jungzin Pablo.
but even in the other argument, the dream is completely conceptual. It is not non-conceptual, so it should
Yeah.
work.
Yes, and yes, there are some debates about the dream. Yes, some people would say there are some concepts in a dream. Like for instance, sometimes you can see someone during your in the dream, but you don't see the face of that person. Still, you know who is that. Yeah, so I guess that in that case you have a concept, but in some textbooks, like Yongzin Purbuchwag would say, it's a non-conceptual mental wrong cognition. So it is
I
not
see.
conceptual, but yeah, some would say, yeah, you have concepts in your dream. So we could say, yes, okay, yes. Anyway, it's not a direct perception because it's mistaken. Yeah.
Yes.
A mind which is mistaken with respect to both appearance and apprehension.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So it's necessarily a wrong cognition, yeah? Or deceptive cognition, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. If it is
Yeah.
So is
a
it
wrong,
Yeah.
four piece?
yeah.
So is it four piece?
Exactly. So yes, a wrong cognition is necessarily not a direct perception and necessarily not a valid cognition. So yes, I put thought consciousness remembering blue. Yeah, it is a thought consciousness, so it's not a direct perception and it's not a valid cognition because it's remembering. Yeah, so it's just a conceptual subsequent cognition. So yes, 4P between direct perception and valid cognition. Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay.
So for if you have time to join the debate club on Monday, we can try to debate those points again. And for next time, I guess I will put some in the WhatsApp, also some small debates like this. Then you can check by yourself before the class. Then maybe it makes things
Yeah,
easier,
if
I
we
guess.
have the debate, then yeah, we'll revise
Yeah.
the definition for that debate. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, exactly. We'll try to do like this. Yeah. Okay. So yes, in that specific context of direct perception and valid cognition, yeah, according to Jung's input Woodchuck and many textbooks, it's 4P. But we could find in some terminologies that are used 3P. That's possible, yeah, because it depends on which translation we use. But if we, that's why it's very interesting to go in the Tibetan language, because then you are sure you will not be, how do you say? Sometimes we can be confused by different types of terminologies, and I have to apologize for the mistakes sometimes, and also the terms that I use, which are not necessarily used in every context. Yeah, but it's just we have to choose sometimes. And as long as you know the definitions, that's okay. Yeah, you can manage. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So 4P between direct perception and valid cognition. Yeah, Kevin is so happy. Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. And we try to next time to see the inattentive cognition as well, and also the inferential valid cognition. So we need to delve into the thought consciousness, which is a heavy topic, but we should manage step by step. Yeah. Thank you so much for the sake of all the beings, for the long life and good health of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the other genuine teachers. Yeah. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you,
My
Christopher.
pleasure. Take
Thank
care.
you.